Hi, I'm Antonio Mora. When looking at the constitutional crisis in the U.S. surrounding Ukraine, President Trump, and former Vice President Biden, you first need to accept that presidents of the United States and any candidates for the presidency should not be asking foreign governments to investigate their political rivals. And they most definitely should not pressure foreign governments to interfere in an election on their behalf. The impeachment inquiry is to determine whether Trump did any of that. It is not about Joe Biden or his son Hunter. When Trump and his supporters defend his actions by pointing fingers at the Biden and their actions in Ukraine, they are engaging in whataboutism and muddying the waters with a false equivalence. Alleged bad behavior by one doesn't excuse alleged bad behavior by another. The stories should not be lumped together. Even if all the worst things alleged against the Bidens were true, how does that change the calculus of whether Trump violated the law or committed an impeachable offense? It doesn't. But while it is a false equivalence to compare Trump's alleged transgressions to the Bidens, that should not preclude serious scrutiny of the Bidens' dealings in Ukraine. That is exactly what the Biden campaign has demanded from the media, and many have been quite happy to oblige, dismissing the allegations against Joe Biden in Ukraine as unfounded and saying they have no factual basis, while dedicating precious little time to analyze them. Some, arguably half-hearted investigations have cleared Joe Biden of wrongdoing in the firing of a former Ukrainian prosecutor who was investigating a Ukrainian oil and gas company that had hired Hunter Biden as a board member. No hard evidence has surfaced to show the father tried to help his son by getting the prosecutor fired. However, a flurry of contradictory statements from Ukrainian politicians in recent days have certainly raised doubts about the former vice president's role. And the basic fact remains that Biden Sr. threatened to hold up aid to Ukraine if its government didn't fire a prosecutor who might have put his family under a harsh light. At the very least, there's an appearance of impropriety that Joe Biden should have known to avoid. Despite that, let's assume Biden had clean hands in the firing of the prosecutor. That doesn't mean we should ignore possible influence peddling, conflicts of interest, and shady deals involving all U.S. politicians and their families, including the Bidens. So here are the basics of the Hunter Biden case. First, he accepted a seat on the board of a Ukrainian company whose founder and main owner was being investigated by the UK for money laundering and by Ukraine for corruption in his days as a government minister. Second, he took the job when his dad, as vice president, was in charge of Obama administration efforts to get Ukraine to crack down on corruption. Third, Hunter Biden had no experience in the oil and gas industry. Fourth, he had no experience in Ukrainian regulatory matters, something his role would entail. Fifth, one of his partners in a U.S. company, the stepson of former Secretary of State John Kerry, ended his business relationship with Hunter because of the appearance of impropriety. And sixth, Hunter was paid as much as $50,000 a month for a job he wasn't really qualified for. Let's put that last point in perspective, something I have not seen done in other media reports. According to various studies, the average total compensation for a board member in the U.S. is well under $200,000 a year. And even the biggest companies in the world rarely pay their board members anywhere near the $600,000 a year that Hunter Biden was reportedly getting paid by the Burisma gas company. It's also worth noting that directors at those big American companies are often among the most prominent people in the country with extensive and useful expertise. If that weren't enough, European companies pay their directors significantly less than American corporations. And one study found Ukrainian companies paid directors a fraction of what Western European companies did. So, comparatively, Hunter Biden's compensation was way off the charts. In that context, if you think Hunter Biden wasn't trading off his last name and that the Burisma company wasn't trying to buy legitimacy and influence by hiring the inexperienced but well-connected son of a U.S. vice president, I've got a bridge in Brooklyn to sell you. Also, if you think the story doesn't resonate in the U.S., remember that both the median and average yearly salaries for an American worker are less than $50,000. That means more than half the workers in this country make less to work full-time at jobs they know how to do than Biden was making in a month for a part-time job he was arguably not qualified for. Now, if Trump opponents dismiss the Biden allegations, then why are we having discussions about Trump benefiting financially from people trying to curry favor by buying his condos or booking events at his hotels? In relative terms, $50,000 a month was likely much more to the Bidens than whatever Trump is making from possible increased business at his hotels. On the other hand, Trump supporters need to understand that what is bad for the goose is bad for the gander. They cannot cry about possible Biden improprieties while ignoring possible Trump improprieties. Serious allegations of financial shenanigans against all politicians should be investigated. You can't have it both ways. Finally, lost in all of this is that Ukraine, the largest country whose borders are fully contained within the European continent, has been partially occupied by Russia for years. Fighting has devastated the Ukrainian economy, claimed thousands of lives, and injured thousands of others. More than 2 million Ukrainians have become internally displaced or fled the country altogether. That suffering must not be forgotten.